Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ted Janolis. I'm a past president of the club, and on behalf of all of us here at the Explorers Club, welcome. This has been a pretty active climate week. I think it's our 7th, and Alex Moore and the incredible team, our staff, and a big cadre of volunteers all pulled together to do this. We started Sunday, and throughout the week, we've already had Sylvia Earle and Johan Rockström, and we had learned about jaguars in Patagonia. So it's been an incredible week, and so here we keep going. I would say that having spent time with Dana Davis, where's Dana? Dana, who's the producer of this wonderful event, strategic advisor for sustainable fashion. I had the pleasure of spending about a half hour with her beforehand, and I think you're going to have a great time today and learn a lot and be very engaged. I was amazed at it, and our club members do really care about sustainability and supply chains and the environment, and so it's a wonderful confluence, and it's just a rock star panel, which I won't introduce because we'll leave that for Yuly. But let me just quickly ask, as is our custom, how many people are here for the first time? Okay, so quite a bit. So I'm going to very quickly give you what I described as the Flight of the Bumblebee introduction to the Explorers Club. So as you walked into our Harry Potterish building, you saw the famous first plaque up on the wall, which says Explorers Club members beginning in 1904 were the first to the North Pole, South Pole, top of the world, Mount Everest, bottom of the ocean, all 3 generations of visiting the Mariana Trench, all the Apollo landings. The lunar landings all carried Explorers Club flags, and that's some of the history and tradition. I would say that recently, over the last number of years, we've been working hard to give proper recognition because all of those things were team sports. They had one person often who was holding up the flag or getting the interviews, but in fact, they're all team sports and often very inclusive teams that generate that. You might think about Hidden Figures for the space program, or even the very first time to the North Pole, supported by Inuits and a multitude of different folks. So we like to think about those famous firsts, not just in a sort of cold, hard case, but also as living, breathing things. If you look to the right when you came in, there's a curio cabinet, and you may have seen one of the lunar landing flags, about this big, from Apollo 11, which was the first trip to the moon. And all of the lunar landing flags were that size, so they could tuck them into their shoulder patches, but there was one mission decided to take a full-size flag like the ones you see around them, and of course that was Apollo 13. So you may have seen the movie and see that it didn't go exactly the way they thought it was going to go, and we have the original flag still in a baggie with a note of apology from Commander Jim Lovell saying, "Sorry, didn't get a chance to unpack your flag. We were kind of busy. We were skidding off into outer space." And one of my favorite phrases ever in exploration literature, his description of Apollo 13 was, "Plans were disrupted." So these are other flags. They all develop their own genealogy. We have 250 of them. If you do something to go out and expand our knowledge of the world, you can get awarded one. And then when they do something that's really cool, they get retired so they don't get lost, stolen, or broken. So this is the Kontiki flag from Tor Heyerdahl, right behind me. Over there is flag number 2. It's hard to see with the light, but it's an earlier version of a flag, and it was used by Roy Chapman Andrews, who, as you may know, was the model for Indiana Jones for his trips into Mongolia. And when you come back for the tour of the club, which I hope you do, if you go upstairs to the library, you can see the original whip that Indiana Jones brought to Mongolia. While you're up there, you can also see President Theodore Roosevelt's application for membership, in which he lists being president of the United States 4th. There are other things closer by over here. This is one of Peary's sledges for the first trip to the North Pole, and there are things all over the club. It's a magical jewel box with all kinds of incredible stories, so we do hope you'll think about coming back. Now, having said all of that, apart from the history of the club and recognizing those accomplishments, we're very much focused on the present and the future. As I just said, with concerns around sustainability and environment, our members care deeply about those things. And we have all sorts of programs that really promote that. We have the EC50, which is 50 explorers that you may not know about but really should. We have the NGens, the next generation, who were in here earlier, sharing stories. You have the Blue Gens, who do that with respect to the oceans. We give grants of all kinds, both on behalf of others, like Rolex, who's our lead sponsor, but also out of an endowment that we use to get people going. So we care deeply about promoting exploration. And in today's day and age, when we get asked what's left to explore, I sort of describe it two ways. One is the never been there before part. And that's if you go into outer space or deep ocean or caves, jungles. There's still plenty of places where really people haven't been substantially. That's one version. But there's another version that is where you're going to roughly the same place, but with new sensibilities, new technology, new sense of mission. That's a progression that can take you to the same place over and over again, but with new eyes. So one quick example of that would be going to the bottom of the ocean, the deepest part, Mariana Trench. The first time it happened in 1960, they basically went down, the window cracked, they came up, it was funded by the government. Incredible achievement, but that was a certain thing. Jim Cameron, the director, who's also a member, 50 years later, did the same thing, but totally new equipment, stayed down longer, collected more data, different kind of funding, a whole new experience. And then Victor Vescovo, who's also a club member, started the 5 deeps, where now basically you can go up and down to Mariana Trench or the deep depths of the world multiple times. So there's a real progression into the future, and these things can build on each other, and that's what our commitment is here. The one thing that we all care about deeply and share, we hope, as a way of looking at things is a deep sense of curiosity. But curiosity in and of itself it's necessary, as they say, but not sufficient. And Senator John Glenn, who was also our NRA chair at one point, called exploration curiosity in action. So you can go explore, but then you got to come back and do something and make the world a better place. So that's what you all are doing. If you're spending your time doing Climate Week, hooray for coming here. We really appreciate it. But I think the topic is such a vital one. It's so fascinating, and we are so grateful that you're bringing it into our house, because these are the kind of discussions and ultimately action that we love to see. So with that, I am not going to talk about the panelists, because we have a fantastic moderator in Dr. Yuly Fuentes-Medel, who's going to take us through this all. And thank you so much for the Footwear Collective for bringing us all together as the host. And you're in for a special hour, so I'm going to scram so we can get on with it. Thank you so much for coming.
Am I on? Yeah. Yeah, am I? Storage. Thank you so much, Ted. This closed a beautiful circle. I was once in an elevator here, and I met the founder of RDNA, Guy Trotti, who is not here, which is a mothership organization that hosts the collective. And here we are 10 years later, talking about the future of exploration with something that is really essential for us. It's our essential form of transportation, and it's shoes. So before we start, I just want to get a read of why we are here. So just raise your hand. How many of you are wearing shoes today?
If anyone doesn't have their hand up, please come forward.
How many of you have a pair of shoes in your closet that you don't know what to do with it? And how many of you have looked at those shoes and see how many parts, materials, and things are in them? So this is truly the representation of what's going on in a big problem. We are producing 23 billions. Last year it was 26 billions of shoes for 8 billion planetary humans in this spaceship. And I don't think there is any shame that we should not walk with shoes. We should solve it. And as Ted was saying, that was the beginning of this journey where we are exploring with a lot of curiosity. I think I like a new mission here. What is the shoe we're going to use in the moon? but exploring of how do we really solve for that in a way that will allow us to stay connected as a human species. And it also will allow us to think in the behaviors as a species that we need to take in a joyful way to really go forward, and somehow, what are going to be the shoes we use on the moon? So with me, I have an amazing panel and people, and I also see in the audience people who has been instrumental in almost a year and a half of work for what we're going to be revealing today. So all use your hand because you're signing a friend DA. And you're now members of the collective. And this is a special moment, and this is a moment that we want to celebrate. And at the end, I'm going to tell you more of what we're going to be doing in the next couple of months after heavy lifting of work, and we have to stay focused on mission. That's what our astronauts board members say to us. Okay, I'm going to start. I really want to start introducing myself. I've been a person who has worked in the intersection of fashion, technology, and climate for the last decade. And the industry came to MIT. Today I'm the program director of climate in MIT. We've been thinking about the teachers. I think the work has been really there. But what about the shoes? And since then, I published a document that is called the Footwear Manifesto. And in that work, the industry and people who is here say, Dr. Fuentes, we got the manual, but now we need to take action. So here we are, a year and a half later, founded the collective under the umbrella of AirDNA, and really motivated to keep going and to keep growing, and with people who really cares about this planet. So it's exciting to be here, and I want to pass it to Elle with, instead to introduce yourself, I really want to ask you, how was the moment when you started your career thinking about dedicating your work to planet, and how did you got here in this conversation?
Is this on? No. No. Yes? Can you hear me? No. Is that better? Okay, there's that little. All right. Okay. I came to this coming out of college years ago and wanting to work with businesses to be environmental advocates. People laughed me out the door. There was no such conversation at all. So I took the kind of pragmatic strategy and I said, well, why don't I join this new industry called IT? And I joined a place like IBM. And not long before this, but some decades, you know, IBM was that company that created those computers that those people in Hidden Figures were using to put the man on the moon, right? So 15 years later, it's now an industry. Enterprises are adopting all these banks in this city. Anyway, so I kind of thought, well, that's a pragmatic, like, why don't I learn new industry, new tools, new experiences? Then years later, I happened to have the opportunity to move my family to China, to Beijing. And when there, on the ground, I'm sending my little babies out the door every day, and it is extraordinarily polluted, let's just say. And after being there 6 years, I thought, okay, there's this like clean tech industry in Cali. Why wouldn't we have a clean tech industry in China? And maybe there's a way to accelerate that. And it was kind of a crazy idea, but it turned out to be right idea, right time, 200 enterprises, many competitors, 7 branches of the Chinese central government, and 7 foreign embassies all came together to accelerate China's adoption of clean tech, green tech. This started right at the time of the Beijing Summer Olympics. There's no doubt that was a huge catalyst to what was going on. Many people laughed me out the door and said, collaboration, like only the Americans do that. Many people told me that. And, oh, the Chinese government will never do that. The net of it is that our work, like the manifesto kind of and others, ended up in the beginning of the Chinese 5-year plans that set forth these new sectors and industries to be strategic to the growth of the nation. That started in 2010. Let's just say I was in a forum earlier today. BYD, the Chinese auto manufacturer down in the south, is the largest manufacturer of electric vehicles. Manufacturing plant there employs 1 million people. Okay, so this is underway, and if you're in a 5-year plan, you're a part of a 15-year forward process. So it's really a part of a 20-year process. So it's happening, and in some funny way that may never be, I don't know if I could connect the dots, but there's no doubt that what we did starting in 2008 made some contribution to what's going on today.
Thank you so much, El. And I think you said to us when we started, it has to be the right people, it has to be the right time, and it has to be something that is crazy enough to be a new reality. So that's been the mantra of the work that we've been doing with the team. I want to pass it to you, Katy, and ask you the same question. First, what has been your career and how you're thinking about this work in the footwear industry? And you can introduce yourself of what you do. But also in the moment that you came to that summit in MIT when we start discussing what if the shoes are a thing. So maybe through that, how do you go into now, a year and a half later with us?
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name's Katy O'Brien. I head up Sustainable Innovation at New Balance. First off, want to thank Elle for all the inspiration. I think oftentimes in the collective, having Earth DNA as kind of like this guiding and inspirational force, to be able to look to Earth DNA and look to people like Elle on the board who have gotten like big players, the biggest players in the energy industry in China, to work together and collaborate. I think that's always like just such a nice touchstone for us as the footwear industry to come together and say like, okay, if you can do that, I think we can definitely figure it out as well. As far as my background, I'm an engineer by background, so super interested in all the technical aspects, especially when it comes to sort of the materialization within the footwear industry. Super focused on our decarbonization and waste reduction strategy. I think there's two things that really pushed me in the direction of focusing on sustainability within the footwear industry. One, I've always been super inspired by nature. I've been a hiker, biker, runner for my whole life, and always like animal lover, nature lover, and kind of have seen how our ecosystems have evolved and changed and the impact that we as human beings have had on our ecosystems. And second to that, so I spent a lot of time at New Balance really focused in on manufacturing innovation and figuring out how we can take digital tools and really bring those in specifically to our domestic and localized operations within New Balance. But then when I started to work a little bit more with our inline operations and went to Asia and kind of visited where the majority of our footwear production was being made, I had this one experience where, you know, often when you go to visit factories for your tier ones, they'll take you, they know you're coming, they'll take you down the value streams, they'll show you like, oh, this is how the shoes are made, it's super exciting, and then they never show you kind of like behind the scenes, right? And so I specifically asked like, oh, what's happening with your waste? Like take me to the behind the scenes. And I was brought into this facility that was probably a warehouse 20 times the size of this, and just floor to ceiling waste, right? And that was, you know, defect waste, it was runner waste from injection molding, it was cut waste of leather and textiles. And I said to the person like, oh, you know, how many days waste is this? And he said, oh, that's 4 hours. And it blew my mind, and I was like, I need to change this right now. So I became totally obsessed with not only behind the scenes, like how do we change the way that we produce, especially because we have shared manufacturing facilities across the footwear industry, but then how do we change the ways that we consume as well?
Amazing. I will pass immediately to you, Diana, because your journey comes from other industry, and I think it's also been that journey for your contribution to this collective has been thinking across sectors. So I want to hear from you. What was your moment of being here and also your career in climate?
Awesome. Also want to echo badass women panel, and thank you for the contributions. It's always nice to see. So I'm Deanna Bratter. I lead sustainability at Crocs. I like to say jokingly and lovingly, you either love our shoes or you love to hate them, and either way, welcome to the party. My spark, this is really funny, but I came across one of those totes when your parents move and clean out the house of a series of letters that I wrote when I was 9 years old to anyone who would listen, that animals on our planet are really important and we have to do more to take care of them. And I didn't know then that it was a spark within me, but I framed one of those and I keep it in my office to remind me that it's in my core, this sense of care for our planet. And then you end up in corporate. And I think that's what's really fascinating and compelling about the work that we're doing together as the footwear industry, because there's a lot of ways to make change and to prioritize sustainability. But business makes really big contributions from waste, from impact, decision-making, human rights, and many other ways. And so we need change agents within business, within corporate, to help guide and infuse sustainability into the work that we're doing. So I didn't know then that it would become my spark in my career, but I actually have been working in sustainability a little over 20 years, and I started my career in the food industry. I really believed that food was a way to unlock sustainability, working with farmers, getting closer to the land, and then the choices we make in our food and how that has both environmental and health benefits. And after spending a really long time in food and seeing all of the transformation that was taking place in that, I kind of looked around at the industry and said, what in the world is fashion and footwear doing? And we still have a ways to go. It's accelerating. There's a lot more conversations, but I would say at Climate Weeks 8 to 10 years ago, it was a lot less prevalent. We didn't have very much fashion and footwear conversations. So I've been with Crocs for 3.5 years, and it has been a wild ride getting engaged in footwear. And the simple idea that in food, the goal is to consume, and then we've got to deal with the packaging and certainly other upstream and downstream. But with fashion and footwear, the thing you consume, we want you to consume more of, is the problem. And so we have to get really creative how we take responsibility for the production of many millions, or collectively as an industry, billions of pairs, and then how we're part of the solution to that waste that's created and that consumption in a responsible way.
Thank you so much. I do remember our first conversation, and it was, if I could do the non-yogurts, let's crack the shoes. And that was, yes, let's crack the shoes. I also want to acknowledge that there is other people from the collective here, and I want you to raise your hand, because this is representation, but the collective is here. So just raise your hand. So when you go back to the cocktails, meet them, talk to them, ask them, what are we doing? So that's one reminder. I've been the 3 days walking from event and really meeting people one-on-one. And one of the things that is interesting, when we started this, we decided the name to call it the collective, the Footwear Collective. And now many, many more organizations are embracing this concept of collective. But I think it was really clear to us that we needed to do collective action. So it's not enough to be together. And we have to kind of create the pathways, which we already did, to really say what are we going to do and how are we going to get there for collective action. So I think I want you to give a little flavor to this audience on what has been for you in this project and your projects, and for AirDNA, starting with UL, really put implementation in action, and what is collective action for you? For the audio people, do we turn it on and off? Just asking. Leave it on. Okay, let's do it.
Leave it on. Okay, here we go. Yeah, collective action is very much about breaking down the problem and being very specific about what the entity, the organization is going to address, and then getting, very tactical and pragmatic about what that looks like. If there's one of the features, I would say, of business leaders is that businesses are pragmatic. They're not long-term academic institutions thinking about future research that has impact. They're here today, have to make a difference. So it's finding those key opportunities where you can change the game, move the needle in the near term, and then facilitating. I mean, part of the reason there needs to be a third-party neutral group, in this case called the Footwear Collective, at the center of about 15 organizations across the value chain of footwear, is somebody in the middle needs to be the trusted third party, neutral party, integrating, synthesizing, hearing the inputs, and then out of the inputs of all the others, coming up with, okay, this is what it means. It may not be exactly what Crocs said or exactly what New Balance said, but it's the, a lot of innovation is at the integration and the synthesis of what people see from their own perspective. So it's the power of innovating at the center of an industry ecosystem, and especially when some number of the parties are playing different roles in that ecosystem, because then they see, that analogy about the elephant. Oh, I feel the tusks and I feel the trunk. Like they see the problem from different angles, and it's looking at the problem in different ways that comes up with new ideas and new answers.
Katy, what has been collective action for you here?
I think first and foremost with the collective, what's been super valuable for us is that I think for those of you who work in sustainability, especially in this environment, we feel pretty resource constrained. And so one thing that I think has been really an amazing attribute that we didn't necessarily think of when we entered the collective was this extension of your team, right? So instead of being maybe 3 people within your brand, you're 50 people across the collective. So I can't tell you how many times I call up Deanna and say, hey, what's happening with biogenic carbon? What are you guys doing for accounting on that? And it's, hot topic. So it's really an extension of your team, and I think the collective does such an incredible job of kind of facilitating that community as the foundation for making sure that we are making progress together.
Yeah, for you, Diana, what has
Want
been?
me to jump in on that?
Yeah.
We're doing some really cool work at Crocs. I could say raise your hand, but I know I might get one hand. Did you know Crocs are made of 25% plant-based material? Oh, a couple people. All right, I like it. So instead of fossil fuel oils to make the materials in the shoes, we're transitioning to plant-based. And we're 25% of the way toward a 50% goal, reducing carbon along the way. We have a take-back program where we're in all of our stores in North America and now all of our stores in Europe, taking back and encouraging consumers to bring their old Crocs into the store, shredding them, and putting them into Crocs. We're doing some pretty cool stuff. But if we do this excellent, and we nail it, every consumer brings their shoes back, our program's super successful, we're only impacting a percentage of the billions of pairs of shoes that are being created every year. So I can feel great about our program, but I can't feel great about the impact that we're having to the planet and to the fashion and footwear system as a whole without being at the table with peers and friends. And in footwear, we're competitive. We are competitive from a design perspective, we're competitive to market, we're competitive with collabs and marketing in all the different ways. So how we have been able to bring together a group of people who feel confident and comfortable sharing data, sharing ideas, and then putting these systems in place where we can do the work together, that's how we're gonna scale impact and actually create systemic change and solutions. So we can pat ourselves on the back for the work we're doing individually, but we can actually implement change when we do it together.
Yeah, that's
Can
true.
I add something?
Yeah, please.
Sorry. I
No,
just want
please.
to build on Deanna's point. I think singularly, we might represent hundreds of thousands of pairs of shoes every year, millions, but then with the collective, it's over 600 million pairs of shoes that are represented. So that also is super valuable when we go to our supply chain partners and we share factories, right? So you go to a footwear tier 1 factory across Southeast Asia, and there will be 5, 6, 7 brands that are all in that exact same space. So when we go to those factories as a collective rather than an individual brand, we bring a lot more consistency in terms of the direction, and we also just bring a lot more negotiating power to be able to move them in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that has been the heavy lifting. The first thing it was to build the trust among the people who was doing this, right? So one of the things we do in the collective is that every company is sharing all their data in terms of suppliers, in terms of materials, in terms of compositions. And that's a big deal because it wasn't something that people were willing to do. So we, as a footwear collective, act as a real operating system and a bank of information. And in the model of the bank, probably many of you have the same bank. You don't know how much money I have in my account, and I don't know how much money you have in your account, but you're a member of the bank. So that was a simple concept that, as a solution, we needed to know how much aggregation of volumes we will be able to impact if we really wanted to reduce waste. So that has been fundamental to start building the trust, and now also helping the companies to start building, and Luis is here who does all of this work, in really helping how are we going to do it in the future. Probably this is going to be a future reporting system where we can keep accountability of the work that we're going to be doing in the next 5, 10 years. So without a baseline, we cannot really say this is how much we impacted. So we are 697 million pairs altogether, and that has been the number now, and we want to keep growing, right? So that's how you start. The other thing I think I wanted to discuss is one of the things that when we created the collective and the conversation we've been having, we divided the teams in groups to really nail down areas of the system and the work that were going to allow us to say, hey, here's how we do it. I think people has a common mission now, but I think what we've been really strategic is to think, how are we going to attack this? Let me tell you one number. When the collective come together, the companies came back with 50 projects. And I was like, I love the optimism. And I know we should do 50 probably now, it's urgent, but we need focus. So we have created a whole prioritization system to get us to 3 major projects that are going to start kicking off actually in October 1st. So you're going to get to see more of that. In that trust, we also realized that in a short period of time, we couldn't be perfect. And people is going to be, you're going to be hearing, and we're really excited about what people is going to be learning more about what we do. And the concept of building perfection wasn't really what we wanted to build. We know that what we're building now will change probably in a year. But if we didn't do this in perfect action, we couldn't have really moved forward the mission that we have, which is massive. So I really want to kind of, with that narrative, I really want to go more deeper in, this decision has been hard in building the collective. But I think how has been your journey to really go in, and I think you started, Diana, with how many stores, how are you going to do this? And it doesn't have to be perfect because we're learning. So I think how has been the journey of embracing imperfect action and just go for, and here we are.
So when you're talking about systems change, and we're talking about consumer products, and we're talking about waste, and we're talking about materials, there's a lot of players. And I think one of the things that has been really easy and helpful to embrace about the collective is we need to think about each of those stakeholders separately, and then we need to pull the experts, because I can't really hang in a conversation around biogenic carbon, but she can, and embrace the experts who can pull in the depth of expertise and the breadth of expertise. And so some of the pieces, for example, there's a lot of work being done around consumer behaviors and consumer engagement. We can design great materials and great systems, but if we don't bring the consumer along on the journey, we don't succeed. We can really focus on the consumer, but if we don't actually have the infrastructure in place to find next life for those materials, we don't succeed. So I think the approach around understanding the stakeholders and the players is really critical. And for us, when we talk about engaging consumers, we know that Gen Z cares more than ever. We also know that it's not translating into action. And so one of our biggest opportunities and biggest challenges is to take the collective learning, try some things that we know are going to be imperfect. Where can we meet the consumer? Is it at a Crocs store? Is it at a Goodwill store? How do we make it as easy as possible? How do we incentivize participation? And how do we take those 78% of consumers who say, I care, I want to do the right thing with this pair of shoes sitting in the back of my closet that I don't know what to do with, and make it extremely easy for them to participate. And that thinking holds true in all the different areas that we're focusing on. So the more that we can understand the stakeholder and then leverage the expertise across the collective, I think we'll be able to continue to make imperfect action. And we have to really listen to those stakeholders. So when we started our Take Back program, I don't know if folks can't really see the shoes, but if you know Crocs, we have charms that we have on the shoes. And so we said, bring us a pair of Crocs back. We'll recycle them for you. We'll give them a next life. If they're wearable, we'll give them to people in need. If they're not wearable, we'll send them on to recycling and next life. And we'll give you this really cool limited charm. And people are like, yeah, thanks, give me a discount for a new pair. And I didn't want to launch a circularity program to say, buy more. I wanted to launch a sustainability program. But I had to listen to the consumers, and that 10% discount has been a huge incentive of people coming in, participating, and repeating. So sometimes we can get in our own way, but I think we're really listening and learning, and then I bring that back to the collective. So then when other folks go and launch their Take Back program, they don't have to go through necessarily the same pieces. They can learn from that, and we can build forward.
Yeah, Katy, you've been working with the team on materials in Asia. Mm-hmm. I think it will be good for this audience to start, as your aha moment was in our warehouse. What has been that imperfect action for you for the work that the team is going to be working in Asia?
Yeah, thanks, Yuly. I think that when we talk about imperfect action on the materials side, we envision this like blue sky of being able to go footwear to footwear or fiber to fiber, right? And I think that the reality is that we're so far from that right now, especially in footwear, because we're talking about shoes that have up to 65 different parts that are made of completely different materials, dyed with different dye stuffs, come from all over the world. And so the thought that we would be able to take those materials and convert them immediately into something that's going to be used in footwear, we've realized is impractical. But there are so many steps along the way that help us make progress and prevent those materials from ending up in landfill or being incinerated. And it might be that the imperfect action, I think, on the Asia waste side within our supply chains is figuring out how we bring that waste into open loop recycling opportunities, right? We know there are so many different types of products that are manufactured in Southeast Asia. How can we take foam waste from footwear and use it to make carpet underlayment? How do we use rubber to make playgrounds? How do we use, and really do that in a scaled way? That's true. A lot of brands have been successful in demonstrating that, but how do we bring that to the entire industry and make that the norm on the pathway for figuring out how to remove that degradation that happens so that we can actually get to a true fiber to fiber and footwear to footwear?
Yeah, I think the journey of molecules is part of the process, but I think one of the things that we did in RDNA was to think about circularity as an economical model. And I think one of the things that we're going to start seeing is that with the work that we want to do, we're not only creating data, but we're also reimagining the type of jobs that we need in order to start imagining this new economical model. So I think back in your experience from Asia, which we also, by default, we have to do it. Majority of our products are made in other countries, and we know that. That's also imperfect action. What do you think is your expectation of the work that we're going to be building here in US and in China based on your work that you have in the past with the energy companies? Well, what is the hope for RDNA in what we build as a collective?
I'm trying to think about that. There's different orientations all around the world to how one chooses a product, how one uses a product, its behavioral interaction with the product. So there's a lot of learning across cultures. I'm not a behavioral scientist, and again, I'm not, in the consumer behavioral science world, but for sure there's rich learning at the intersection of those things. I know one of the things that we think about with new jobs is the whole world of data and analytics and AI. and things like that, things that you wouldn't have historically associated with the manufacturing and production and design of a footwear product. The heritage of this entity, we've mentioned the word a couple times, Earth DNA, and the DNNA is an acronym for Data in Action. The other two co-founders who are not here today, husband-wife couple, Dr. Deva, a female, Newman at MIT, and former, she was the assistant administrator to NASA under Biden. Not Biden, excuse me, Obama, and her husband is the one of the most important architectural designer of space vehicles and things like this. He designed the South Pole Research Station, if you ever get a chance to go there. So these two people, these two people are the perfect marriage of the engineer and the artist. They belong in this club here, by the way. Their heritage will be in this club, and their inspiration, they're like the true space and ocean explorers. Anyway, so it's the heritage of their inspiration and ideas that we created this idea of an operating system. This is the MIT woman, the engineer. Why wouldn't we have an operating system for the Earth? And then the designer was like, and why wouldn't that operating system help people visualize and see the problems and the opportunities? So that was the heritage of this, and now we're applying the idea that we could create the operating system for the circularity of the shoe product. And at the intersection of that is data about where the materials come from, where they're being used, where they get recycled, all kinds of behavioral and waste aspects. So you wouldn't think so directly that the waste of a shoe product is actually kind of a data problem as well as a behavioral problem. But in fact, we think we can unlock that. And something that maybe Yuly will announce later is a new grant that we received from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Our kind of our Earth embassy, by the way, is in Cambridge, Mass, just off the campus of MIT. So we are a kind of Cambridge, Mass, Commonwealth of Massachusetts entity, and so we competed for and just won a grant, but I'll let Yuly mention that at the right moment. But that's really going to power up the aspects of a data-driven operating system to help all these companies. And then back to that competitive mention, of course, Deanna, these are extraordinarily competitive industries. The idea that these two companies and others would be willing to share their data, that's a leap of faith. And these people are taking a leap of faith that there's a better outcome if we do share. Certain things are always proprietary. Certain things you're never going to share. And there's a kind of common rule and understanding between those worlds. But in the sharing world, one part of it is going to be some aspects of the data. And that can power up this operating system. And we're going to do a lot with that in the coming year and then put that in the market as a tool in all kinds of interesting ways. So, and that's, of course, AI-driven, when you're talking about this current world and you're talking about an MIT collaboration. Of course, it's AI-driven, right?
I didn't know we were going to announce that, but you have the friend NDA, so
NDA.
This is secret, so you have to be surprised when that happens. It's coming up. But it's true. I think one of the things that we discovered is this is not a material problem. This is a behavioral problem. And if you approach the problem as a system for behavioral change, no matter what happened with those materials, if we as a human species don't participate, we're not going to be able to change it. So the way we're embracing the data interaction is really human-centric. This data has to help us, has to help you, each of you, to make better decisions with your things. And at the same time, it has to help the Katys, the Dianas, the Daves, the Mirandas, to do better work in what they're doing every single moment and every single decision they are designing that product. So yes, we're going to have an operating system, and we're really excited. So before, I want to do questions. I know we have short, but then I think if you allow us 7 more minutes or more, I really want your questions because this is now family. You're part of the collective. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about what's coming. Since this crowd has signed up the Friend DA, from what we're going to be doing, maybe I will ask you, Katy, to talk more about what we're going to be doing in California, just briefly. Yes, no? No, okay. Diana? That, you see,
I'll give you a high level. You can fill in the details.
This is how the collective operates. We really find
We
the,
really support each other.
the expertise, and who is better is the one who takes the piece as we go. Go, Diana.
So at a very high level, we're doing activating our pilot through our infrastructure pillar, which says in order to help create solutions, we need to get shoes back and we need to understand consumer behavior. So in Southern California, in October, October 1st, yes, in October. I know, why don't you come now? We are launching Take Back with consumers in partnership with Goodwill. So you can bring shoes to any Goodwill stores. We'll be collecting them. We'll be gathering data. What shoes are we getting? What condition are they in? How many? What components do they have? What materials are they made of? And taking all of that data through our infrastructure program and our systems development program. So it's the first time that we are actually taking that data and putting it in action. How many companies are we strong now?
11.
11 companies, 11 footwear companies. We're all marketing this in individual ways to our consumers in Southern California through different creative solutions to see how we can get them engaged. And we're going to take a whole lot of learnings back. And there is an incredible, I mean, that sounds like one pilot in Southern California, but there are so many team members, so much thought, and so much engagement that has gone into this. And we're really excited to get that information back and figure out how to continue to be imperfectly perfect in evolving our program.
Yeah, so one call of action. If you have a friend in California, LA, we have postcards for you to send it to that person and go to the Goodwills and send their shoes. It's going to be 50 stores of Goodwill, and we have mapped the data of the geolocalization of these stores together with the retail stores of our companies. So how do we make it easy for people to rethink and be part of the collective? And instead to say, this is only about shoes, we're building a movement. Because we need to step and step, understand the materiality, understand the parts, and understand the baseline. So outside, you're going to be helping us with data. You're going to go to that board, and you're going to see the activity of what are you going to do with your shoes and the second lives of your shoes. So that's one. The second one that is coming in 2026, that we are kind of thinking, is being led by you, Katy, so I know you can speak about that one. And it's also thinking about, it's good to be thinking about the front end, how are we going to be doing consumers? The consumer team, who I don't see anybody here from the consumer team, is doing a study that is called the Say-Do study. So I say I will do something, but probably I won't do it. Which is being the controversy of people wants to buy sustainable products and yes, wow, we should do it. We gotta know for sure what are the numbers. We wanna meet people where they are. We wanna know your secrets, feelings, and how can we meet you. So that study that is collecting 30 pounds of shoes is gonna be together with a say-do gap. How do we meet you in the moment that you are doing that donation and now we are rescuing your shoes? So that's the second one. And then the third one.
I would just add to that one how critically important it is so that we can continue to make the business case for our companies to be investing in that, because our companies are focused on how we engage the consumers in our products. And so it's about the sustainability solution, it's about the collective action, and it's about building the business case back for our companies so we can say this is how we engage consumers and how we keep consumers with trust, build our brand equity, and keep them thinking about us being part of the solution.
Last one. Okay. So I've been focused on the materials side with many of the people in the room here. We essentially took the approach of collecting data from the 11 brands. TFC, Lewis then aggregated that data, anonymized the data, and said, here is where your biggest sources of waste are and what it is. And then we had basically a list of, EVA, rubber, PU, polyester. And from that, we said, okay, as these 11 brands, let's decide to go after the biggest one in the largest region where that's operating. And later this year, we'll be running 3 different pilots. One will be focused on how we take that waste, aggregate that waste at the shared facilities, and bring that to technology innovators who are trying to do, basically make that so that it could eventually be closed loop. The second one is exploring ways that we can bring that, even kind of overcome some of the degradation that we experience in the recycling process, but bring that into different components within the footwear industry. That's the second part of the pilot. And then the third part of the pilot is figuring out how do we identify and then build upon secondary markets like I mentioned before. So really across those 3 sort of areas of study, we'll be looking to aggregate waste at our shared facilities and distribute that waste to those 3 different kind of work streams to figure out what's the now, what's the medium, and then what's the future of that waste.
Thank you. I want to pass to questions, maybe 2, 3 questions from the audience. I don't know if I have to pass my microphone or how we do this, team. And then we can close. Yeah.
I didn't know I was going to go first. Okay.
Go for it.
Let's talk about money. Actually, first, I want to say I ran research and testing at LL Bean for almost 10 years. And I worked with your company, and your university, and there was no one like you at any of these places. So thank you. They would pat me on the head and say, "Go back to Maine, you nice little shrub." Now, I work as an investor, and I work in advising investors. And I think one thing, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but the largest investor in the world, Sovereign Wealth Fund, has just put, it's a $2 trillion asset manager, $1.6 trillion of their funds through a natural capital risk assessment. Like, who knew that air and soil and water and pollinators matter? Who knew? So now it's getting real. It's really about money. Yeah. Last I knew, you were both privately held, but you need to make, you're not anymore.
Public, yeah.
Okay. So talk about the money side for a minute, because there is a lot of attention now, thankfully, including this week, on not just the business case, but whether or not your industry, our industry, is even investable in the future.
Anybody want to take or?
I could say
Yeah.
super high level. So 1, we all are members, so we have membership fees, and 2, we invest in the projects so that we can pool resources to fund Yuly and the amazing team, and that we can kind of keep this going. So I think from like a collective perspective, there's a structure, it's all transparent. From a Crocs business perspective, I like to say that creativity is at the center of our finance strategy around sustainability. So specifically for our take-back programs, the very nimble sustainability budget has seeded the program and project, and we're putting the money back into the shoe, and the business is allowing us to take the margin, the revenue from the 25% recycled shoe that we're creating and invest it back into growing the program. That's not a traditional way of funding projects and programs. We don't have a CapEx fund or anything else. We're not building our own infrastructure and our own capital, but we're really trying to be more nimble about how we're investing in sustainability and proving the model that if we can create our own open loop and closed loop systems, consumers are interested. We're seeing really strong, I would say really strong results. We've only launched 1 recycled shoe with the shoes we've taken back, but we're launching a second one. And allowing us to reinvest in sustainability from an internal perspective. And I think creativity, every time we get a win, it's because we came up with a creative way to be really thoughtful about our funds. And we have to be really smart. Investors are asking a lot of questions of business. They're not really sustainability questions these days. So right size, right scale, right scope for the sustainability work, it is happening. There's been a lot of conversation this week around the cost of silence. And really making sure that we are doing the work and we are finding the right ways to talk about it. And the last thing I will say is we focus on what is the cost of not doing this. It's not just how much is it do we have to invest. It's what is the cost of not doing it. We have many customers, wholesalers who this is important to. What is that business value worth? And if we didn't do it, would those partners leave? Probably not, but still I can put a number on that and a price tag and it makes it a more compelling business model. So creative. solutioning, I guess. Yeah.
I'll just add one thing. So I think part of the reason that many of the brands joined in was that the Footwear Collective is based on the premise of the circular economy, right? And so within that, it's sort of inherently linked to this idea that if we move away from the waste creation that we have today, there is the promise of being able to actually get value from that waste. And so I think a lot of what we're doing is trying to collectively prove out that by working together, we're creating efficiencies that overcome some of the challenges that are associated with driving towards a more circular economy. I think in the shorter term, those will be more evident through programs that facilitate things like resale collectively. But down the line, I think that like the material specific work, for example, especially as regulation and consumer sentiment start to be more monetizable, I think that, you know, it becomes more relevant where brands are paying a bit more attention to like recycled content. Suddenly there's going to be, maybe through SPR, there's going to be more of a demand on having recycled content that has a direct economic either, you know, carrot or stick, right, associated with it. So, yeah, great question though. Love Maine. Yeah.
Okay, so George Cummings, SDG 14 Ocean Ambassador with UNESCO, but also 33 years ago, founder of South by Southwest Interactive. Both of those things I want to see. How do we connect ocean and shoe stuff? And I want you guys to come to South by and do a panel. So that's the two things that at the high level, I am blown away. One of the things I love doing at South by is picking random things and going into and walking out and going, oh my God, a connection's made. I did not know what I was going to walk into for shoes.
Love that.
And that was not an intended pun. But, yeah, no, there's a couple of things you threw out just blew me away. You know, and I am a shoe wearer. Part of it, because I'm an ocean global traveler frequently, there's probably a couple billion people on this planet that may never wear shoes. So now we got 6 billion people, let's just say, wearing 26 billion shoes. A few Imelda Marcuses out there. And then this BD number absolutely blew me away. And it's 980-some thousand employees in one company. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around what that really means to us. Yeah, anyway, it's all related. So anything that prevents one molecule, I'm a biochemist, look at the ocean for 60 years, 50 years now, with ocean eyes of science, one CO2 or methane less, I'm going to support and promote the hell out of y'all.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And great minds think alike. I was going, the shoe thing, I was sitting there saying, geez, what's great, we're collecting Crocs. What about all? So this is...
Crocs make really good boat
No,
shoes.
I know, but I'm just saying that you're going to start collecting all shoes. Now we're talking
Absolutely.
moonshot shit. So
Yeah, love it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any other question? Yeah, I think there's one.
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm also from consumer goods, not footwear, though, cosmetics. And one of the major concerns and feedback that we've gotten from consumers is around packaging. And I know we've been focusing on materials of shoes, but how do you address the packaging and the materials that your stores are actually made of? Because those are two big areas, and it's part of the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. Great question. I think, you know, when we do sort of like New Balance specific top-down analysis, where's our scope 3 category 1 impact coming from? And we do a breakdown specific to footwear, for example. Packaging is less than 1% of our impact. And so what we really focus in on with those limited resources is figuring out how to identify recycled, bio-based, and emissions-based feedstocks across leather, textiles, and soles. And there is effort on the packaging side, moving towards 100% post-consumer recycled content across the board for our cardboard, trying to minimize the amount of virgin material that we're using for plastics packaging. And there is a team that is focused on that. But